I did think that my initial responsibilities in government for native title and our constitutional convention on a republic would expose my inherent and I thought rather obvious limitations and be the summit of my career. Fortunately, Prime Minister Howard, to whom I do owe a great debt, thought he should test me some more. Responsibility for all matters radioactive was certainly testing. My task of devising and steering through the Coalition Party room and the Parliament our reforms to Labor's Native Title Act saw me gain the dubious distinction of being responsible for and centrally involved in the longest debate of any single bill in the history of the Senate, a remarkable 56 hours. That first debate of the Native Title Amendment Bill regrettably didn't resolve the matter, necessitating a second 49-hour debate. Thus, that bill, for which I had carriage, resulted in a total of almost 106 hours debate, by far the longest in Senate history. The next longest is the GST debate at just a paltry 69 hours. That record no doubt reflects my inadequate powers of advocacy as it does the intricacies of the bill. It might also reflect Senator Bob Brown's seemingly endless series of questions to me, which turned the committee stages into an interminable tutorial on native title. I am able to reflect with satisfaction on the 1998 Constitutional Convention, which it was my task to organise, and which I do think was one of the more successful events of its kind. I'm particularly pleased that the election of convention delegates was, at my insistence, the first national election since 1922 for which voting was not compulsory. In good faith, our government put the convention's preferred Republican model to a referendum in 1999, and nothing in my long career in campaigning has given me greater pleasure than the comprehensive rejection of that Republican model. One cause I will remain actively involved in after I leave this place is advocacy of the virtues of our current constitutional arrangements. There is, of course, a negative side to my political ledger, and in my case it consists of the lost causes which, like Jude, I have so forlornly championed. I came into this place a committed federalist, and I leave as a proud federalist, but I have fought forlornly against the creeping centralism which regrettably afflicts both major political parties. I have fought a lonely and quixotic battle to restore to Australians the legal right to choose whether or not to exercise their right to vote. I've not been able to convince even my own federal parliamentary party of the worth of that great cause. I do note that, based on a recent article in The Spectator, I seem to have converted Mark Latham to the virtues of voluntary voting. I, of course, welcome Mark's support, but I am still trying to work out whether that's a good thing or not. More reassuringly, Lindsay Tanner, whom I do hold in high regard, recently admitted to growing doubts about the wisdom of compulsory voting. I entered this place with a profound commitment to smaller, less intrusive government and lower taxes, only to watch the reach of government into our lives and the imposts upon us to pay for it continue to expand. I was singularly unsuccessful in my internal advocacy of a lower rate of immigration, mindful as I am of the adverse consequences of Australia's very high rate of population growth for Australia's quality of life and its natural environment. I want to commend Labor MP Kelvin Thompson on his courageous and principled advocacy of a more sustainable level of immigration. I failed in my responsibility to establish a national radioactive waste repository in the central north of South Australia, one of the best sites in the world for such a facility. I failed to sustain support in my own party for the sale of a government-owned electricity business called Snowy Hydro. And I failed to achieve the sale of a government-owned private health insurance company called Medibank Private. I dare not even mention what else I'd like to have sold. I failed to have the courage of my conservative convictions concerning my serious reservations at the time about the US plans for the invasion of Iraq. And I did not have sufficient courage of my federalist convictions concerning my deep reservations about the use of the Constitution's corporations power to underpin our government's work choices legislation. The High Court's frankly surprising decision to uphold the constitutionality of that legislation has been a disaster for federalism. And I do hope the Coalition understands the lesson of our 2007 defeat, that the Australian people will only ever accept incrementalism, not radicalism, when it comes to industrial relations reform. And finally, I regret my incapacity to create the circumstances in which John Howard might have seen the wisdom in retiring on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of his Prime Ministership in March of 2006. So my career has been an odd mix of the occasional success and a sequence of failures, but I'd like to think I'm getting out before falling victim to Enoch Powell's maxim. Perhaps the most curious thing to me in reflecting on my career is the amount of time and energy occupied by consideration of the issue of carbon dioxide. Little did I know when I entered this place 18 years ago that carbon dioxide would play such a significant role in my career. Education, health, defence, foreign affairs, taxation, fiscal and monetary policy, all of these I expected to dominate political discourse. But carbon dioxide? Never. As I learnt in school, carbon dioxide is a clear, odourless, tasteless and invisible gas, actually vital to life on Earth, and it constitutes just 0.04% of the atmosphere. Nature is responsible for 97% of the Earth's production of CO2, humans just 3%. And yet many now see anthropogenic CO2 as the greatest threat to humankind on our planet, a threat which demands no less than an economic revolution to avert. And anyone who dares question this as yet unproven theory of anthropogenic global warming is branded a denier, as we heard from my good friend Senator Evans today, and treated as a veritable pariah. I must say, when I first learned of the existence of the Australian Greenhouse Office, I assumed it was responsible for supplying tomatoes to the Parliament House kitchen. But no, as I soon learnt as Industry Minister, it was in fact a government-funded redoubt of veritable soldiers in a war against carbon dioxide. The zealotry and obsessive passion of these warriors in the battle against the apparent evils of carbon dioxide does remain a curiosity to me. And after fighting these people for 3 years as Industry Minister, I really did wish they'd just go away and grow tomatoes. I'm quite surprised and rather disappointed by the loneliness, isolation and indeed demonisation that the sadly misunderstood CO2 is experiencing. Thus, upon leaving the Parliament, I'm contemplating the foundation of an organisation called the Friends of Carbon Dioxide. Membership will of course be open to all, including the plants whose very existence depends on CO2. And I think this organisation's slogan self-selects. CO2 is not pollution, which has both accuracy and melody to commend it. I do acknowledge the remarkable power of CO2. After all, it led me to have to do something I had thought unthinkable, and that was to resign from the Coalition front bench at the end of 2009, albeit for only a very short time. It played a significant part in the demise of Kevin Rudd and Malcolm Turnbull. It may well result in the demise of our current Prime Minister. So that really is some gas. I do remain optimistic that one day the world will realise that carbon dioxide is more of a friend than an enemy to the Earth's flora and fauna, and I do seriously believe that, given the extraordinary complexity of the natural forces controlling our climate, and which have done so for millions of years, the only sensible policy response to the natural process of climate change is prudent and cost-effective